And here we go. We have liftoff.
Propulsion continues to be nominal.
R68 chamber pressure looks good.
Rolling up. Roger, roll, Atlantis.
Water towers fly! Yes!
Tango down to nominal.
Flight downside FD off. Bring in FD off. Off. It's orange!
Orange 25! Oh my god! Oh my god!
Decollage.
What is it?
Put that in the big bag, Eagle.
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed.
We rise together, back to the moon and beyond.
This methane will be igniting in the flare, correct?
Yikes. You good? Sure. We don't need any more of these.
Good afternoon. This is a live look from Japanese company ispace as they attempt to complete the second ever fully successful private lunar landing. HAKUTO-R Mission 2 is set to touch down on the moon just under an hour from now. I am Sawyer Rosenstein. I will be your host for today's lunar landing stream. And good to see everyone in chat can hear us now with the 5x5s. I am joined, though, by my fellow Space Coast commentator on commentary here, Max Evans. How's it going, Max?
Good afternoon, everybody. Yeah, I feel like I was just talking to some of y'all very briefly over on another stream that we have going on a different part of the U.S., but at the moment we are looking at, hopefully, the next successful landing on the moon just after Blue Ghost just a few months ago.
Yes, and we'll talk about the kind of shared history that they have almost in a way with their ride to space and hopefully now with their ride into the history books. Pushing the buttons, pulling the levers for this stream is Ryan Caton, and I am Sawyer Rosenstein. We'll be going through the steps leading up to the landing with you today. So, this is the second attempt for them to land a private mission on the moon. Their first HAKUTO-R mission had a slight issue with some of the radars that it had. It was feeding data to the spacecraft that the spacecraft thought was incorrect when it turns out it was correct. Therefore, it ended up hovering at about 5 kilometers till it ran out of fuel and crashed. This is a very similar spacecraft to that one, but obviously with upgrades to their software and systems like that. So, Max, what exactly is on HAKUTO-R? Can you talk a little bit about the spacecraft?
Yeah, absolutely. So first and foremost, the spacecraft, both Mission 1 and Mission 2, were built by a company called ispace, which are the personnel that we are seeing on screen now. They're both built about the same, or if not the same, very, very, very similarly. And the naming of Hakuto is actually Japanese for white rabbit, and the R stands for reboot. In the case of Mission 2, the spacecraft has been named Resilience after the results of Flight 1, and we all, by this point, know kind of what happened and that you just talked about, Sawyer, so we don't have to rehash a bunch of it unless you really, really want to. But the spacecraft itself weighs about 1,000 kilograms in mass. It stands about 2 meters tall by about 2.5 meters wide. And we thought that the spacecraft had absolutely fixed landing legs, but in one of the animations that was just previously shown, just a few months ago, showed the landing legs folding out from the top. So that was probably just for storage, and then they were deployed shortly afterwards. But I thought they were fixed, but I guess not. I guess not entirely. But what's really neat about Mission 2 and Resilience in particular is that one of the payloads on board is a micro rover named TENACIOUS. So the first spacecraft didn't have it, and Mission 2, hopefully following a successful soft landing on the surface, will be able to deploy this rover and scoop up some soil for NASA to analyze and have a good look at. And there it is, actually. Speak of the devil. It's on your screen right now.
There you go. Yes. I'm just waiting for Jack Black to appear. Oh, wait, that's Tenacious D, not Tenacious.
Oh, jeez, Sawyer. Oh, jeez.
I had to put the pun in there. I'm sorry. But yeah. So you could also kind of see an animation there of how this landing is going to work. So in terms of the thrusters on board for the landing, as we're used to seeing maybe a whole bunch of thrusters on different ones, this one has one singular engine though and 6 kind of assisting engines, right?
It does, and that main thruster is what is going to be the main proponent in the deceleration burn and the landing burn for a hopeful soft landing here in just about 50 minutes time. So, and it's worth noting as well that both the Firefly Blue Ghost mission and Mission 2 were launched at the same time aboard the same Falcon 9 rocket. And the reason why they took so much longer in terms of Mission 2 took so much longer to reach the moon is because that Mission 2 was sent off on a much higher and much lower energy trajectory to get to the moon because the fuel supply aboard Resilience is far more limited compared to what Blue Ghost had on board. It was also able to take advantage of more Delta V from Falcon 9's upper stage as it was able to fire a third time compared to deploying Blue Ghost after its second burn in orbit. But the pros and cons of that go back and forth. The main pro is it is a lot more energy efficient and you use a lot less fuel to either correct and to get to lunar orbit. So while Firefly was able to achieve a much more direct translunar injection because of the Delta V achieved by Falcon 9's upper stage after only 2 burns, the third burn was achieved by the upper stage, and as a result, Resilience took a lot longer to get to the moon. But here we are, hopefully just under an hour from touchdown. And when I say it took a lot longer, the mission itself for both probes launched on January 15th, and then Blue Ghost was able to get to the moon in just about a month or just over a month. It's been over 4 months now since it was launched, and it's just now only getting ready for a landing here soon. So that is a very simple explanation, but oh my goodness, there it is. So that is its targeted landing site. Oh my gosh, I don't know what it is about these graphics and these renders, but this is what gets the nerves pumping, and this is what has had us really nervous in previous attempts because Resilience would be the first ever bespoke Japanese spacecraft to successfully land on the moon, and not to mention the first for ispace following the results of Flight 1. So there is a lot riding on this mission. There's a reason why they named it the spacecraft Resilience following the results of Flight 1. So the team has been fully invested into this, and the future of iSpace and missions 3 and beyond. They're how those missions go and the path that those missions take are directly dictated by what happens today. So cross your fingers, cross your toes, cross everything you got, because we are really hoping that this one goes well.
Oh yeah, that is for sure. And again, this would only be the second ever private mission to fully successfully land on the moon. We've had a couple that have landed sideways and last a couple hours, but if we're talking full mission objectives, this would be the second one to ever do it for a private company, and that would be really cool to see. Let's see here. So about where it's going to land. You see it there on the bottom of the screen, Mare Frigoris. So where exactly is that on the moon? Well, we have a nice little animation for you here. So if we head towards the northern pole of the lunar surface there, you'll see the giant mare or sea. So it's one of those flat, darker areas there. Mare Frigoris, which is the landing site for this particular mission. It is also the same landing site that they attempted for HAKUTO-R Mission 1 that they will be trying this time for HAKUTO-R Mission 2. So that is where hopefully this will land on the moon.
Hopefully, and it's also worth noting that this is a volcanic basin just south of the moon's north polar region. So, and the reason why this site was selected was because it should allow, assuming all goes well, it should allow continuous comms with Earth with minimal delay. So, you wouldn't have, I guess, this much clarity if you went for directly on the north or the south pole. But this landing site was deemed ideal for this spacecraft in particular. So, but if needed, they have 3 other backup sites, and they have until June 8th to utilize any one of those 3 should they opt to abort a landing today. But so far, they seem to be pressing ahead. But Mare Frigoris is their primary site to land.
Yep, and that is where hopefully we will see that in just about 46 minutes from now, a successful touchdown, which we had the graphic up a little bit earlier, but we should probably talk through what we can expect for the actual landing process itself. So once it starts that burn to slow itself down, uh, can you kind of talk us through these steps here, Max?
So first and foremost, you need to be able to shed off all of your velocity from lunar orbit, and to do that, obviously, you have to fire your thrusters retrograde. And so, braking efficiently with that main thruster will require a majority of its fuel reserve, and obviously that is why they wanted to utilize a low energy orbit toward transfer orbit to get to the moon. Once they have shaved off enough velocity, then the spacecraft will begin to pitch down and aim its landing legs toward the surface. During the terminal approach, the landing site will become visible to the onboard systems aboard the spacecraft, and assuming the computer is playing nice and actually agreeing with the data that it is seeing with its altitude, it will begin a very slow and gentle descent into its terminal descent phase, and hopefully a landing followed short after, with continuous communication with the spacecraft, assuming all goes well again. I do apologize if I keep saying that, but there is a lot riding on this one, and considering how Flight 1 went, with just hovering 5 kilometers above the surface before just completely falling, and it was a disastrous landing. It crashed. So I know the team was very gutted about it, but oh my goodness, I'm just so ready. I am so ready to see the spacecraft just land. I'm just ready for it. I can't even speak about it.
Yes, and it does a mission 1 landing sequence, but it is identical to this one. Again,
Yes.
a lot of the vehicle is pretty much the same. A lot of the procedures are pretty much the same. The main difference, of course, though, is working on the software that reads the altitude data and the data from below the spacecraft to acknowledge when it's correct data and when it is not correct data, which was the cause of the issue on that first flight.
Yes.
Really quickly, I mean, thanks to people here. The Space Pope with a $20 super chat saying, "Bless this moon boop." I love that.
This moon
Thank
boop. Well, hopefully it's
Hopefully
more.
it's a boop.
Hopefully it's more than just a boop in an actual soft touchdown.
Yes. And Gene W, thank you for becoming a Pad Rat member as well. So let's go back to talking about the rover, since we see it right there on their screen on the desk in front of them, and we've got some questions about it. Boostback Basics is saying, can you talk about the plan for the little lunar rover on board? Now, this little rover is really cool. Again, it's going to have all these different experiments on it. It's going to have an actual HD camera on the front of it, where we should be able to see the views from it roving around. And it will use the HAKUTO-R Lander as sort of a communications relay. So there's an X-band antenna on HAKUTO-R that will be used so that they can send the commands to the rover and be able to see the video and everything coming from it. And you talked a little bit about one of the experiments before, but for those who missed it, Max, one of the big ones is also checking out that lunar regolith.
Yes, and it has a scoop on board that actually NASA is involved with, and I believe they will also be taking ownership of that scoop in situ once it is done for any analysis that NASA wants to do with it. So a major contribution was there, and it took a lot to get this rover on board the spacecraft in itself, and it was certainly a welcome addition compared to Mission 1, which did not have a rover of this sort. But that onboard camera should be glorious. But of course, it's worth noting that the spacecraft has to land upright in order for any sort of rover deployment to go well. So fingers crossed.
A minor detail, but yes,
Minor
it is
detail.
made.
It's not quite like Slim.
No, definitely not. But it is a carbon fiber structure, so it's really cool looking, and the whole thing only weighs about 5 kilograms. So a lot of power in a tiny little carbon fiber rover.
Absolutely.
So that's not the only science on board, though. There's a couple of other different experiments and things that they will be using to learn about the surface of the moon. Max, do you want to hit any of those?
I believe that is up your alley, Sawyer. I want to hear your answer on this one.
All right, I got you then. So there's a couple different experiments that will be on board then. So the United Nations has one of their own. It's not so much a science experiment, but a way to kind of preserve human culture. So they took 275 different human languages, stuck them on a memory disk, and placed that on board. But in terms of other actual physical experiments, they will have a water electrolyzer on board. That is from Takasago Thermal Engineering. They also have a food production experiment developed by Euglena Company. There's also a radiation probe that is from Taiwan's National Central University on board, as well as a plaque to commemorate the mission called Charter of the Universal Century. And on top of that, there's also a piece of art on board. There was on board the rover a Falu red miniature cottage called Moonhouse by Swedish artist Mikael Genberg will be on board and will be deposited on the lunar surface. Let's see here. I believe Jan is wondering what countries were involved for this mission then, Max?
So to start with, the company itself, iSpace, is based in Japan, and then there is the obvious involvement with the rover with NASA, and not to mention the mission itself is wrapped up in NASA's CLIPS program, or Commercial Lunar Payload Services, as were most other landers that we have seen launch within the last year and a half or so, including IM-1, IM-2, and Blue Ghost. So, and also with Mission 1 was as well. And then, but the actual rover itself was built out of a subcontractor in Luxembourg. So, in terms of the facilities involved in countries involved, we have so far Japan, Luxembourg, and the United States. So those are the three main ones. So I believe there are a couple of other ones, but those are escaping my memory at the moment.
I'm pretty sure you hit the main ones there.
Okay.
And a lot of the ground tracking and communications is in partnership with ESA. So there's going to be
Yes.
a bunch of different, obviously, nations involved in that. Severin is wondering, do we know what the lander's intended lifespan is? How many lunar day-night cycles can it survive?
Ooh, I actually don't know that one off the top of my head. I'd have to do some digging. But normally, from the past missions that we've seen launch, or at least attempt to land, it's at least like one lunar day, which is roughly around 2 weeks, because the moon is terminally locked, or tidally locked, I should say, with the Earth, and that one side of the moon is constantly facing the Earth, and a moon's day is dictated by how quickly it can orbit around the Earth, which is about 1 month in time. So I would imagine probably at least one lunar day, which is anywhere from 14 to 16 days on average. So, but if they can manage communication into the lunar night, that would also be impressive. Or if they can even wake the spacecraft back up because of its onboard solar panels. Once it goes into the shadows, obviously there is no sunlight to power them or charge them. So if they manage to wake up the spacecraft from a sort of hibernation mode following the lunar night, that would be equally impressive. But I would imagine for at least 2 weeks.
Right, that's typically the case, as you pointed out. Once it gets into that lunar night, it gets extremely cold, and most of the
Yes.
spacecraft that's sent up there, especially the private ones, don't really come with a super complex heating system to deal with that. And also, as you pointed out, this spacecraft is solar powered. It has solar panels for all of the energy. So for 2 weeks when there's no sun, the battery kind of drains.
It's
While we have this,
suboptimal. Yeah.
yeah, while we have the graphic up, thank you, Ryan Caton, for that. It's worth pointing out that they consider this mission successful in 10 different steps. So they've been going through different milestones. Obviously, preparing for launch, launching it, getting communications with it once it launched, then going ahead and completing all the orbital controls, working its way with the lunar flyby, and then doing all of its deep space orbital control checks, then actually making it into orbit. And so we are currently on success number 8. So completion of orbital control maneuvers in lunar orbit. That is where they are at currently, and that was their 8th success. The next 2 are hopefully what we will see today. Success 9, completion of the lunar landing sequence. And then the most important of all of those is then establishing steady system state after landing. So basically, is it upright? Is it going to be able to communicate with it? Will they be able to do science with it? That is steps 9 and 10. So these are the two mission critical successes that we are hoping for today. But so far, they are 8 for 8, which is impressive.
And it's also worth noting really quickly that the lunar orbital insertion was achieved way back on May 7th. So it has been out by the moon for quite a while now, getting all of its checkouts and making sure that the spacecraft is happy and healthy and able to proceed with any of the landing procedures. And it is currently in about a 100-kilometer orbit above the lunar surface, but that will change pretty quickly once it begins to fire its thruster retrograde and begin its descent.
Yes. As Starship fires up its engines for a static fire, we will hopefully now see HAKUTO-R fire up its engines for the lunar landing, which there's a question of will we be able to see live video from the lander on descent? And I don't think we'll be able to. Typically, it's very hard to do the live video communications from the moon to begin with, but also the fact that they primarily want to focus on getting that data stream back. And so
Correct.
most companies will have it land, they'll record video, and then once it's down safely on the surface, have it send that video back afterwards. But I don't think we'll get live video. We should get live data, though, right?
We should, and spacecraft of this sort typically have a very strict amount of bandwidth that they can actually use, and usually data on that front takes like a much higher priority than any sort of live video. Which, mind you, there's about a 2-second delay at the speed of light at the distances that the moon is from the Earth. So while live video might not be ideal, you also need to be able to fit a camera that has enough definition and has enough bandwidth to stream all of that back to Earth in near real time, or as real time as it can. So it's just a lot easier to beam data back. And while we won't have video, we should have a live animation or graphic of how the spacecraft is oriented based on the data that the teams at ispace are receiving. So it'll feel a bit like live video because we should be able to see how the spacecraft is moving in real time, but obviously it's not live video. It isn't like there's a spacecraft around it in real time taking video of it on the way down. As cool as that would be, we are not at that point yet. So it's right now it's just down to live video or live. Excuse me. Good gracious, live data.
Yeah, we saw a little bit earlier of what it actually looked like of
Yes.
the animation. So hopefully we'll see that as it gets closer to the lunar surface. And again, as they continue to talk on the right side there, we are here to answer your questions and anything you may have. So tag us at NASASpaceflight if you have any questions related to this particular lunar landing mission. Here's one from Severin saying, is the lander already on a landing trajectory, or will we soon see a deorbit maneuver?
We should see a call out and an animation for the deorbit burn and beginning the descent. So that has not happened yet, as far as we are aware. But we should see it called out very shortly, assuming that happens on time. Because reminder, they have until June 8th to land Resilience, and they have 3 different backup sites as well. Assuming that they have to abort and delay for any sort of troubleshooting, for any sort of onboard issues that they end up coming across. But once they begin that descent burn, they are committed. Like, there is no turning back. It does not have enough fuel to abort its descent phase.
Right, so once they commit, but they can continue to do any tests and checks and health checks that they need to do while it's still in orbit before they actually go for the descent.
Correct.
And it's worth noting, this thing took quite the journey to get there. So even though it's in a 100-kilometer circular orbit now, it started off in a really wide Earth orbit and then a really wide lunar orbit, right, Max?
It did. It was so. As a reminder, both Blue Ghost and Resilience were launched at the same time, but based on how the spacecraft were stacked inside the fairings, Blue Ghost was kicked off first and then sent on a translunar injection because it could afford that with the amount of fuel reserves it had on board. iSpace and Resilience required a third burn from Falcon 9's upper stage, which put it in a much higher, in a much more eccentric orbit, which requires a lot less delta V in fuel to adjust any sort of speed. The downside of that is it takes a long time to get to the moon if that's the case, because this sort of flight path is designed to take massive advantage of any gravitational influences between the Earth and the Moon in order to either gain or lose velocity. So it took about 4.5 months or near there to get to the Moon. And at its peak, it reached about 1.5 million kilometers from the Earth, which is ridiculous. That's about 4.5 times the distance that the Moon is from the Earth, just for context. So it went way out there, and it took quite a while to get there. But the massive upside to that is it needed a lot less fuel to get to the Moon, albeit it took much longer to get there, especially compared to Blue Ghost. But it is there now, and they are getting ready. So at the moment, everything seems to have worked, and they are on track.
So far, so good. Let's see here. Clearly random. Thank you for becoming a Pad Rat member. Very much appreciate that. Logic Tab with a good question. How difficult do you think it is to find a suitable landing space? So for this particular one, they've had this landing area that they're aiming for planned out for a while. So it's not like once it goes over there, the spacecraft is going to have to find a landing site on its own. It will have in its systems of where it should be, but it should be getting live data back from its sensors to basically say, how far away am I from the ground? Are there any craters I need to worry about? Are there any boulders I need to worry about? Things like that. So it's something that they spend a lot of time before the mission scanning, checking, doing all their research on. You have, thankfully, a lot of spacecraft in orbit around the Moon with high detailed imagery, like LRO, the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, that they can use to get the data from and find these suitable landing sites. TerraSpace is saying, why did HAKUTO-1 fail to safely scan the lunar surface and crash last time? Max, you want to take this one?
It's really just all about the data that the onboard computer was receiving from its sensors, and it was deeming it to be faulty and then not, and it was just there was a whole bunch of confusion with the onboard systems, which led it to thinking that a 5-kilometer altitude was the surface of the Moon, which quite obviously it wasn't. So it just got confused and hung out there until it just completely depleted all of its fuel supply. So that was, I don't want to say it was an oversight by those who built the lander, but certainly was a bit of a facepalm in terms of those, especially on the software side of the spacecraft. So they took a lot of time in making sure that there was that there was a minimal chance of any recurrence of the issue. And I think it's just safe to say that Resilience is a lot more prepared to make it to the surface than Mission 1 was. So fingers crossed.
Exactly. Yeah. The problem became with the other one was it went over a crater, and that kind of threw off some of the data as they were going over it. So it was an altimeter that was trying to figure out the distance from the ground, and as it passed over the crater wall, it got confused on its actual altitude, and it thought, wait a minute, this data is wrong. It can't be right. I'm going to reject it. It turns out the data was actually correct and should have accepted it, so it could have made the correct calculations. Therefore, when it thought it was just hovering above the lunar surface to safely touch down, it was actually hovering 5 kilometers off the surface and then did not safely touch down.
And the real upside of this mission being more or less a repeat of what Mission 1 would have been is they know what they are up against now. If they take the same flight profile and the same descent profile in terms of what features on the surface that the onboard sensors have to look out for. So they know what they have. They know what they have to look for, and the onboard computer knows how now. But I guess better knows how to compensate for anything that it comes across, in terms of a 5-kilometer altitude not being the surface and the actual surface being the surface. So there's just, I think at this point, the whole team has learned a bunch from Mission 1, and Mission 1 got a lot farther than I guess some would have, either expected to. So, and this would be, as we said in the very beginning, only the second private lunar lander to have successfully touched down on the surface without tipping over and being on all four. The first of which being Blue Ghost. So, and because these two launched on the same rocket on the same day, that would be quite the achievement.
That would be spectacular. Total success for one particular rocket launch, 2 particular lunar landings. It would be spectacular. Here's one from Severin asking, how many engines/thrusters does the lander have and what fuel do they use? So it has one main engine underneath it, as well as 6 assist engines, so to speak, that will help with guiding it down gently to the surface. So it is a bipropellant system, so it uses a mix of hydrazine and nitrogen tetroxide. Basically, you touch these together, they go poof. It's one of those as opposed to more gentle fuels, quite caustic, quite toxic. So it's a good thing that there are no people around for that. Yeah, basically, they touch each other, they combust, and that's how you get the thrust. So it's 7 engines technically, although 1 main and 6 assisters.
And the longest burn to this point has been by that main thruster, which was about a 9-minute burn in order to achieve a lunar orbit, which is quite a while. But it will have to burn for about that again, if not a little bit longer, to get down to the surface. And any of those assist thrusters are there to compensate for any roll, pitch, and yaw that the spacecraft, I guess, develops unexpectedly. So. Yeah, we are getting close here, aren't we, Sawyer? About 25 minutes away.
About 25 minutes from the scheduled touchdown on the lunar surface for HAKUTO-R Mission 2, spacecraft named Resilience. This is absolutely spectacular. And for those who might just be joining, might be worth going over again where exactly this mission is going to be landing. So, Max, where are we expecting this to touch down in 25 minutes from now?
So the main landing site selected is called Mare Frigoris. It is a volcanic basin just south of the moon's north polar regions, just like Mission 1. And as we just said, this entire mission essentially is a repeat of what Mission 1 aimed to be in the name of predictability and making sure that the spacecraft can get to where it needs to go. That being said, they have 3 additional backup locations to work with should they need, and they have until June 8th to utilize any of those if they have to abort for any reason today. So if not today, they have some time to work with, but once they begin that deorbit burn, they are committed.
Exactly, and there is Mare Frigoris, the northern part of the moon's surface, just below the North Pole there. And the additional landing attempts and locations that they have, though, are all still within Mare Frigoris, and that was part of the way that they planned the trajectory of which they would get into orbit. The inclination that they were at for the orbit was all to be able to land within that zone there.
And there were a multitude of reasons for why they chose Mare Frigoris as a landing site, but one of the more key reasons is that assuming the spacecraft touches down successfully is that it is able to maintain constant communication with the Earth, so long as the spacecraft is oriented correctly. So they should be able to maintain contact with the spacecraft even into the lunar night until either the spacecraft runs out of power or goes into a sort of built-in sleep mode or hibernation mode, should that be programmed into the software if the teams at iSpace opt to try and wake it up after the long lunar night of about 2 weeks.
Yep, and you can see the animation there from the iSpace view of what we can expect as we get into the landing, as we were talking about, kind of angling itself to sort of slow itself down, do that upward pitch before finding its landing site, getting a view of it, and then there are those different engines that you saw to help guide it down, the 1 main and the 6 assist, plus the reaction control system thrusters that you saw up there as well. So we're just about 20 minutes away, and again, as we get data from iSpace, we will be able to provide it to you as well, but we're all kind of in that watch and waiting phase as we take a look at the other payload that is on board this particular flight, and that is TENACIOUS, the iSpace micro rover. And we say micro, it is quite micro. It is only 5 kilometers in mass.
Kilometers? You mean kilograms?
Kilograms in Americans, sorry. We're terrible at conversions. But yes, it is 5 kilograms in mass, and is only 26 by 31 by 54 centimeters. You can see, though, some of the other experiments that are on board. So there is the water electrolyzer. There's a deep space radiation probe, obviously, for going to the lunar surface. For humans, one of the concerns is radiation exposure over long periods of time. So that is another one that they have on board there. Luna Glenna, you see there. So that one is a food production experiment. Obviously, if we want to stay on the moon long duration, we're going to need to be able to produce our own foods there. So with those environments, that is one of the items that they will be testing as well. The Space Century chapter that you see there, that is part of Taiwan's National Central University. So that is the special plaque that you see there, the plate. And then that is the art that we were talking about earlier, the moon house. So this, it's kind of cool. It is literally just a house, so to speak. It was made by a Swedish artist that will be placed onto the surface. That's the first time I've actually seen it. That is really cool looking.
That is actually really cool, and a lot smaller than I imagined. Even though I'm not quite sure what I was expecting. But also on the rover itself, I think we should point out once again that there is an onboard like soil scoop to analyze any of the regolith on the surface. And once that is achieved, assuming that the spacecraft is deployed successfully, the sample of regolith in the scoop is going to be taken ownership of by NASA for any further analysis that they want to do. And that is one of the main contributions that NASA has toward this project. On top of this mission in its entirety, following in the NASA CLIPS program, or the Commercial Lunar Payload Services program.
Yes, and shout out to the artist Mikael Genberg, who created that from Sweden.
That's
The
awesome.
little red miniature cottage.
I wonder how quickly that will get faded by the sun's rays in the moon.
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, I'm not
And
quite sure
I wonder what it's made of.
what materials they used, if there was any special paint that was used. Obviously, mass is super critical when launching, so it's going to be something very small and very lightweight.
Of course.
But I wonder. But yes, that will be placed on the surface. Because for those who are unaware, the flags that were placed there during the Apollo missions have all faded because of the large amounts of radiation. The red, white, and blue flags are all just pure white now. So it's the surrender flag instead of the American flag. But
yeah, I mean, there is no atmosphere on the moon to either diffuse or combat any of the radiation coming from the sun. So you are incredibly vulnerable there for long periods of time without any sort of protection of either water or any other shielding that is deemed appropriate for whatever mission you were there for. So and that's why I was curious as to either what that house is made of, and how quickly it's going to lose its color, because it's taking all of that radiation from the sun full blast with no protection.
that could be part of its own experiment. I'll be intrigued on that.
Hopefully, the onboard camera has a view of that as well.
Yes, that rover does have an HD camera mounted on the front of it, so they are expecting to get good views from it as it roves around, as it does the scoop, as it deploys the house. Mark is asking, what does Mare Frigoris translate to in English? It translates to the Sea of Cold. So, yeah, brilliant place to put electronics. Let's put it in the Sea of Cold. But
it's weird to think about a volcanic basin being a sea of cold.
That is a good point as well, yeah.
And also, there is a vast temperature differential once you're on the moon as well, because again, with no atmosphere, there is no way to diffuse any sort of radiation coming from the sun. So I think in the direct sunlight, you're upwards of around 300 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm not quite sure what that translates into Celsius. And then once you're in the shadows, you're at about negative 300 degrees Fahrenheit, which is quite the temperature differential that the spacecraft is going to have to endure, assuming they want it to wake up following the long lunar night. So all of that to keep in mind as well, as we are just over T minus, or L minus, I should say, 17 minutes.
Yes, L in this case, landing minus, not launch minus.
Yes.
I can't believe we're getting down towards the final 15 minutes here. Again, hopefully we should start seeing the data streams and the animations coming in from ispace to give us a better idea of where the spacecraft is at in its lunar descent. Let's see here. Someone saying the lunatics are at it again. Yes, actually. The word lunatic has the word luna in it, as in moon. So we are moon crazy here. So we are lunatics. At least I am.
Oh, Sawyer.
Sorry, I had to. Anyway, as we get towards the landing and descent phase here, can you kind of talk about what the descent is going to look like, Max?
So first and foremost, they have to begin a successful ignition of the main thruster on the lander retrograde, which is going against its direction of travel, in order to start shedding its velocity to get closer to the surface. And once it has shed enough velocity, that the spacecraft itself will begin to orient itself down toward the surface. And then with the assist of its 6 other control thrusters stationed around the base and its RCS thrusters, or reaction control system, towards the top of the spacecraft, that should help keep it stable as it begins to descend slower and slower down towards the surface, hopefully for a soft landing. I'm not quite sure if there's any sort of like crush cores or like shock absorbers built into the legs at all. I mean, you'd have to imagine there's some sort of shock protection, assuming it comes in a little bit hard. But that should take around, I believe it's 9 or 10 minutes in total, maybe a little bit longer. But either way, we should be hearing callouts of when that burn is to begin. And hopefully, once it shuts down, we will have 4 solid landing legs on the surface of the moon and not hovering at 5 kilometers altitude above the surface.
Yeah, for those unaware, that is what happened, unfortunately, to the first HAKUTO-R Mission 1, which attempted a very similar spacecraft, a very similar landing in Mare Frigoris as well. However, as it passed over a crater wall, the altitude data that it was getting, the spacecraft thought it was incorrect data, when it turns out it was correct data, and therefore, as a result, it ended up hovering 5 kilometers above the surface and crashing. So, this is their second attempt, as Max has been pointing out, the name Resilience being a result of the resilience of the team to build a second lander and learn from their mistakes, to now go ahead and go for this second landing under 15 minutes from now. John R. is wondering, how long is the lunar night at this section of the moon? And Max, that's pretty important for mission duration, given that this is a solar-powered spacecraft.
Absolutely. So the moon takes around about a month to make one orbit of the Earth, because it is tidally locked to the Earth, meaning that one side of the moon is always facing Earth. So Earth is spinning around it, and the moon is slowly orbiting around the Earth. So the moon is always facing one side, and that is why we get phases of the moon. And that's why also from our perspective here on Earth's surface, the moon tends to look the same, whether you're in the northern hemisphere or in the south here on Earth as well. The moon will just look upside down if you're in the south. It happened to us once when Jack and I were in New Zealand.
Wait, you were in New Zealand?
We were in New Zealand already about a year ago. Geez. But it takes about a month for the moon to orbit the Earth, and because it's tidally locked, a lunar day is anywhere from, I think it's 14 to 16 days on average. It depends on, I guess, what time. I don't know if it's due to the inclination that the moon is to the Earth, and depending on the time of year, but it's sometime in between 14 and 16 days. So, and that is the expected lifespan of the spacecraft as well. Oh, we're seeing a bunch of cheering now. Have they begun the deorbit burn?
I'm trying to look at the
Have you heard
data
any
feed that
callouts?
they have on that big screen behind them. So far, waiting to see the data on that screen, waiting for them to announce the info as well. Let's see here. Again, we'll be keeping an eye on this. About 12 and a half minutes till it is expected to touch down on the lunar surface. Here we go. There's the data.
There we go.
It looks like the burn is underway. Yes, this is the braking burn. And you can see it's not one giant long burn. You can see kind of pulsing the thrusters, it looked like there. But so far, on the right side, you see the altitude, the time to touchdown, and then those are the assist engines and the main engine. So as we discussed, it is one singular main thruster and then the 6 assist engines that will help it on the way down. But so far, that is what we want to see. So
The orbit burn is underway, and I believe if the data was correct, it was already down to about 18 kilometers altitude. And mind you, it began at about 100 kilometers above the surface.
far so good then. That is what we like to see. And should be about 10 minutes away. So again, it will do the deorbit burn. It will then slow itself down a bit. So once it does the deorbit burn, it will pitch up to then get the correct attitude. It will identify the landing site below it and then hopefully come to a soft touchdown. So right now we are one step closer to the final 2 successes of the mission. They claim that they will have 10 different successes at this point. So that included getting into space, doing all the checkouts, flybys, making orbit. Now we are on steps 9 and 10, which is completion of the lunar landing sequence, which the lunar landing sequence has now started, and then establishing a steady system state. So basically being able to communicate with it, making sure that it's upright, that all the systems are operating and functioning. But it's worth noting now, Max, that this is the point of no return. Now that it has completed its deorbit burn, it's committed, right?
It absolutely is, and I think the point of no return is a much more appropriate and I guess serious way of putting it, because the spacecraft itself does not have the fuel reserves to abort any of its descent maneuvers once it begins, and that is also one of the reasons why they opted with a very low energy transfer orbit to get to the moon, which took about 4 months, is because the onboard fuel supply is incredibly finite. And once you are out, you are out. There is no chance of sending a spacecraft up to refuel it, or if they have to abort or anything. Once they begin firing retrograde and coming down, they are coming down either controlled or not controlled, and hopefully they can stay controlled. But yes, we are beyond the point of no return now, and we are actually not that far away from when they would expect a touchdown.
Yep, less than 10 minutes from that planned touchdown in Mare Frigoris. For those just joining, this is the iSpace Lander, which is a private Japanese company. The mission is called HAKUTO-R Mission 2. The spacecraft is named Resilience. On board is a small rover named TENACIOUS. It also has different science experiments related to lunar regolith, related to radiation, related to food growth, water, electrolysis, as well as some other less scientific and more kind of human experiments on board, including a special plaque, a drive that has 275 different human languages on board, as well as a Swedish artist who made a small house that is on board. So it is a mix of regular, science, and human science in a way. Let's see here. 8.5 minutes to go. Max, how are you holding up? This is getting exciting.
I'm not gonna lie, I'm really nervous. Didn't think I would be, and I didn't think it would get to this point, considering we've seen multiple lunar landers attempt to land at this point. But we've all seen how all but one of them have gone, i.e., IM-1, IM-2, Slim falling over, but Blue Ghost so far is the only private lander to have successfully touched down on all 4 and maintained mission. And so this would only be the second, and it would be the first for iSpace and a first for the country of Japan, which is a huge milestone for everyone there, and especially for the team that has been working on it, especially considering what happened with Mission 1. So I'm not gonna lie, Sawyer, I'm getting real nervous. I'm
getting very excited too as we get closer to seeing the landing on the moon. As it's crazy because we see the moon all the time here on Earth, and it's like, oh yeah, that's cool up there. But the fact that we're about to hopefully have another robot moving around on there is even cooler. And even cooler than all of that is some of the prints that we have at shop.nasaspaceflight.com, especially the solar eclipse print, which solar eclipses only happen because of the moon and its distance to the Earth and its positioning in front of the sun. We have some awesome ones from this most recent solar eclipse that we had last year. You could see the diamond ring there. These are available as metal prints. They're also available as posters, as well as all of the other items that we have, including all the way back from the Flight 9. I say all the way back from Flight 9. That was very recently.
It was only 9 days ago, Sawyer.
Yeah. A couple of your shots in there, a couple of my shots in there, and anything you get supports the photographer as well. So that's shop.nasaspaceflight.com. kind of see the graphics there in the background on their screen as it continues through the timeline. We are working with you to try and see the data. I know it would be very nice to have the constant live telemetry on
Yes,
the
it would be.
screen.
I mean, I guess once it comes down to crunch time, they'll have it. They'll have it playing the whole time. But crunch time's getting near, and we're just under 6.5 minutes out. So hopefully we can get full screen, full time data overlay very soon. This is getting tight.
Exactly. And again, at this point, it will be pitching up slightly to kind of adjust its trajectory as it goes down with small thruster fires as needed before pitching over to hopefully then be upright over its landing site using cameras on board to view that landing site, so to speak, for the telemetry, and then hopefully firing those that single main engine and the 6 assist thrusters to slow itself down and land on the surface. And you can see there the model that they have of HAKUTO-R. It's a decent sized spacecraft. I mean, it looks kind of small in comparison, but when you have a person standing in front of it, it's a decently large spacecraft, right?
It looks small, and also when you put it by comparison next to Blue Ghost, there's a great photo of both Blue Ghost and this lander stacked next to one side of Falcon 9's payload fairings. And honestly, the spacecraft look kind of small, but Falcon 9's payload fairings are honestly just big. And and mind you, Resilience also weighs around 1,000 kilos, so it's not exactly a light spacecraft either, let alone a light lander. So it's not as small as some people think. It still has a decent amount of size to it. But granted, a spacecraft of that size only weighing about 1,000 kilos is quite the achievement. But we're getting close, guys.
There we go. Now we're getting telemetry from ispace. There we go. This is what you want to see. Again, on the right, you can see the different engines there, the main engine, and then the 6 assist thrusters.
It looks like the telemetry is updating only once every 10 seconds or so.
I think it's every 5 seconds now. Yeah.
Okay. So
And
timeline looks to be about on. So we're about 4.5 minutes away from expected time to touchdown.
yep,
Already
and you can-
lost just in the last few seconds. It's already lost about 2 kilometers in altitude and dropping fast.
Exactly. You'll occasionally see that green mark on the screen. That is their landing site in Mare Frigoris. See it up there at the top, that green dot, and it appears that the red mark next to it is the spacecraft on its way. So again, this is part of the braking burn phase. It will then complete a pitch up, identify the landing site, and then do the terminal descent phase and finally land. Hopefully 3 minutes and 55 seconds from now.
And to break down exactly kind of what we're seeing, I believe that yellow line is the spacecraft's line of communication with Earth. I could be wrong. So do you know?
It looks correct, but I'm not sure either.
Okay. I think IM2 had a similar overlay, and that line sticking out from the spacecraft, seemingly into the middle of space, was actually its direct line of comms with Earth. So I have a sneaking suspicion that's what it might be as well. But holy cow, already down to about 6 kilometers already. We're getting close.
And you can see how steep it's changing there. That little graph in the bottom right, that is altitude versus time. So you can see how quickly the altitude is now starting to decrease. And it still has to drop another 5,000 meters, 5 kilometers in the next 3
4.5
minutes.
already. Yep.
Yeah. So far, so good. Again, next up will be that pitch up phase. Sorry if we end up going a little quiet because we were watching this at the same time as you, obviously.
Just watching intently.
Exactly. It's hard to believe 2.5 minutes this will be on the surface of the moon, whether that be upright or not is the main question. And there's the pitch up. You can see all of the assist engines firing a little bit faster there as it does.
Oh, are we beginning pitch up now?
Yep, that is the pitch up phase. That looks good. So
Looking
next up will be 2 final burns as it views the landing site. It would be the terminal descent and then the terminal landing. This is an
And this is just
animation
in
of
animation. Yep.
yeah.
Sorry, Sawyer.
There we go. For a moment, it looks like the telemetry dropped out, but they still have it. So now they're in the terminal descent phase. Look at that altitude drop, how steep that is now.
Oh, goodness gracious.
50
50
meters.
meters. Oh,
Not sure if that's a telemetry dropout or... They're getting no
so
speed or
look-
altitude readings.
Yep. And we're about 90 seconds ahead of when they would have expected touchdown. And we are either in a comms blackout or they have experienced some kind of malfunction with resilience. We are still waiting to see. Ryan, I'm not sure if there's a way to pipe in some audio from the stream to listen along, because we're all just waiting anxiously here.
Yeah, at this point, it looks like the data stream has stopped.
Just a little more. So it's less than a minute until the scheduled landing time. So let's see how the MCC members are. Less than a minute away.
Can't tell if those in MCC are concerned and or stressed.
Very, very nerve-wracking moment. Everyone's super concentrated, looking at the lander on the screen. And it's
Right, and again, it's unclear at this point.
Already 4:17, the scheduled.
It's unclear at this point if that was an expected data dropout or not, though. Let's see, we're coming up on what would be the landing time.
This is, where we need to be patient and wait for just a while. We already passed the landing scheduled time, and we're still verifying the state, confirming how it is on the surface.
At this point, this does not look promising. Those are some very concerned faces in their mission control center there. And again, we have passed the time that it was expected to be confirmed on the lunar surface. So at this point, it has landed. It does not appear, though, that it is either communicating properly or in one piece for that matter, as the data dropped out about 90 seconds before the scheduled touchdown from what we were able to see.
Lander. It might take some time before the confirmation. It'd be great if you can bear with us.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that we're looking at a lot of worried faces at the moment.
I would agree with that.
Well, still, we're in the process of confirmation and verification.
Again, at this point, communication, it looked like the data stream stopped about 90 seconds before the scheduled touchdown. The data cut out. Haven't heard anything since. It should have landed 2 minutes ago now.
Based on the data that we last had,
Still in the process of confirming, checking. MCC room is filled with members, more crowded than its normal date. So it can take some more time, right? That's done. So I think we
people leaving the
need
room.
some time
Yeah.
before sharing the status to people in the venue and those who are watching online.
You can see them
I
in the front. They're looking at something with the data stream.
Yeah, I believe, at least from what we saw on our side, the last bit of good data that we had was it was about 50-ish meters above the surface and still traveling at a decent amount of speed. I guess too quickly for a spacecraft to successfully touch down and, I guess, survive impact. Because 50 meters is about a little over 150 feet for those who use Imperial, and that's not a small distance.
And if I remember rightly, it was looking at about 200 kilometers an hour at that point.
Yeah, and that's not slow.
No. Mission 1, for those who may remember or was listening as we discussed it earlier, Mission 1 had the issue with the data that was being fed, so it thought that it was just hovering above the lunar surface when it was actually 5 kilometers up. In this case, it looked like it was about 50 meters up, so a lot closer to the surface, but traveling much, much faster than it should have been.
Yeah. And they were about 90 seconds away from when they would have expected the spacecraft to touch down. Okay, so this is the last bit of data that we had. So at about 52 meters in altitude, at about just shy of 200 kilometers an hour. Yikes.
Also interesting, look at the time versus speed graph in the bottom right of it there. That obviously it should be going down, but it should still be a little more linear, not a nosedive as it appears from that time versus speed there. And again, 52 meters above. There's the steep drop. In a matter of a couple of seconds, it looks like it went down a lot. Which, again, we expected it to go down. I just don't think it was expected to be that quickly. I get that it's a logarithmic graph. Yes, I'm aware, but that is still...
It's a very steep drop in altitude, and that is either... that either coincides with either some sort of miscalculation in the descent trajectory, or heaven forbid the spacecraft experienced some kind of failure with its main thruster and was unable to shed enough velocity to safely continue on its path toward the surface. We don't know. We are still waiting on official word from iSpace as to what may or may not have happened. But at this point, all we know is that there was a data dropout at about 52 meters in altitude and traveling just shy of 200 kilometers an hour.
As we're waiting for the data, I'm not sure if this is possible, Ryan Caton, who's producing, if it's possible to kind of replay the last bit just before the communication was lost again. I'd be interested to see just how quickly it was going, how slow it was going, all that information. Thank you, Ryan. Working on getting that pulled up. As we continue to wait for official word from iSpace, let me very quickly thank Johnny Cakes for becoming a Capcom member. Capcom and above gets access to the NSF Discord. Hopefully we will see you there. All right, here we go. This is the animation that they were showing at the time, so a little different from the actual data. So 255 kilometers an hour at 800 meters, 600 meters, 300 meters. And then there's the 187 and 52. Holy smokes, that dropped
and
fast.
Then suddenly, yeah. But from the looks of it, it looked like they had good thrust from all 6 supporting thrusters and the main thruster. So this is incredibly speculative, but maybe there was another sort of fault in the altimeter, and they were not as high as they actually, or not as low as they actually were.
Huh. Yeah.
I think
and that face in the bottom left said it all, by the way.
I was just going to say, yeah, that's not a promising look.
But yeah, just to see how quickly that dropped from 800 meters down to those 52 meters above was very fast. And again, it's hard.
Yeah.
Ryan, that's just mean.
Yeah, golly. It looked like they had good thrust, but I don't know if the graphics that we were seeing on screen were just indicative of the thrusters just being on or off, or if those bars measured out in the thrust levels of each, especially with the main thruster. Because if there was an issue with the main thruster either dropping chamber pressure or some issue with fuel supply in that it was producing insufficient thrust, that would result in a lack of deceleration and a rapid plunge toward the surface, especially for a spacecraft weighing about 1,000 kilograms. So either way, I think at this point, I don't want to say it's safe to say, but at the moment, it does not look, I guess, entirely promising for resilience.
One thing I've seen people pointing out in chat is that the pitch up maneuver almost seems like a pitch down maneuver instead. I'm sorry to keep bugging you, Ryan. Maybe we can check that out. Again, all of this is speculation at this point, but it appears from all the data that we have that it did crash hard into the lunar surface. All right, so let's see. This is the pitch up phase. So at this point, it should be, maybe a little further back.
I think they just cut to in animation, like right at this moment.
Yeah, but before that, when the pitch up phase went red on the timeline graphic.
Oh, I see. Okay.
All right, here we go. So right now, 300 kilometers an hour. 2.5 kilometers off the surface. So this is supposed to be the pitch up maneuver.
It's changing its attitude, albeit not very quickly, but not seemingly out of control.
1,600 meters.
And I love how they cut right to in animation, like right at the point where.
Look at that. All the engines shut off, 990 meters. Then some of the engines came back on, 824. Full engines.
Yep.
686. Huh.
Cut again.
And then all data's lost.
Yeah.
It almost seems like it could be that it pitched in the wrong direction, so instead of thruster slowing it down, it was speeding it up.
I mean, if it was speeding it up, we would see the telemetry show an increase in speed. So maybe it just didn't pitch up enough, and it was just carrying too much horizontal velocity at that point still. But then that wouldn't entirely coincide with the graph that we're seeing on the bottom right in terms of an almost just straight plunge. So maybe there was some sort of miscalculation with the onboard altimeter with the main computer once again, albeit nowhere near as drastic as there was with Mission 1.
Yes, and
Complete
iSpace
speculation, but that's just, I guess, an observation.
Yes, iSpace at this point has not commented other than they are going to wait before they make any announcement to the public as they review the data. But that was, that descended very, very quickly at the end. And while we wait for an update here, let me just really quickly, as I mentioned before, Johnny Cake's becoming a Capcom member. Hopefully we will see you in the NSF members Discord. D. Pascal, thank you for becoming a PadRat member. Michael, thank you for becoming a PadRat member. And Ben Sass saying, congrats on getting this far, Team iSpace. Heads held high, on to the next mission. Exactly.
I think we can all say a good amen to that. I mean, assuming the data lines up with what actually happened, they got very close to the surface, especially compared to Mission 1. Like, very close, within like 150 feet or about 52 meters in altitude. That is not far at all. Goodness gracious.
Yeah. Again, 8 of the 10, there's the leg folding, by the way. 8 of the 10 were successful. So that's not terrible of all the tests that they were doing with the Lunar Lander and everything. Obviously, the 2 last successful steps were landing and then being able to communicate with it. So those were kind of the most important of them. But 8 out of 10 ain't bad, as Meatloaf said, right?
Is that what?
No, he said 2 out of 3 ain't bad.
Oh, well.
Anyway, speaking of 3, I've seen people asking, is there a HAKUTO-R Mission 3 on the books? Do we know?
There is. So there is Mission 3, and I think there's 1 or 2 more after that, although I don't think they have been named. Mission 3, at the moment, it just stands as Mission 3, and I'm not entirely sure in terms of the details for either collaborations or who's going to be involved with that, or payloads, or timeline of when that might happen. But based on the events that we have seen today, they may want to take a little bit more time and make sure this one is done even more correctly, or just done right, but to an extent even beyond what they did with resilience. But to answer the question, yes, there are future missions planned for iSpace and going back to the moon.
So they will have another shot at it, at least
Yes.
one more. The spacecraft, by the way, in terms of the other successes that we were talking about, in terms of getting into Earth orbit, testing out all of its systems, its thrusters, everything like that, this spacecraft traveled a total of 1.1 million kilometers on its journey up till this point right now, which is, you gotta admit, that's impressive. That's 3 times the distance directly from the Earth to the moon, with the trajectory that it took, with everything that it saved, thrust-wise and weight-wise.
Look at this onboard video taken from Resilience, though. Look at that.
It was so promising. Oh,
And mind you, it took Resilience about 4.5 months to get to the moon because it was flown on a SpaceX Falcon 9 with the Blue Ghost lander as well. And because of the amount of fuel on board, or I guess lack thereof, it was not able to achieve a translunar injection like Blue Ghost did. So they opted for a much more fuel efficient, albeit a lot more, I guess, time costly. I'm not even sure if that's a real phrase, but it took a lot more time to get to the moon. But the upside is they saved a bunch of fuel in terms of in-flight maneuvers. But golly.
yeah. Also, the people asking why we don't have live video during these landing attempts, typically that's because they will record video, but the main thing that they need is that live data.
Yes.
If given the priority of choosing how, they're limited in the amount of data they can send in real time in that case. So when they basically have to pick and choose what's the highest priority for them, it's give them the numbers, give them the data, how the spacecraft is operating, and we can always download the video later from after the landing. Although at this point, that probably won't happen if the spacecraft is lost, as it appears to be.
Yeah, spacecraft, especially of this size and that were built of this budget, have a very limited set of bandwidth that they can have sent out. So in this case, you, I guess, theoretically could have had the choice as to either broadcast any sort of video feed from the lander, I guess, from the camera that you are seeing, the same camera that you're seeing on screen now, that got this video as it was getting into lunar orbit. Or you can choose to save a lot of bandwidth and just transmit the raw data from the spacecraft to be interpreted by systems and personnel on the ground. Yeah, so in this case, it just made a lot more sense, as does in most cases with spacecraft, to just transmit the raw data and save the bandwidth for other purposes.
Yeah, I know it's a shame for those of us watching, but in terms of...
Yeah. It would be great to have the quality of video that we had with the last Mars rover landing. That would be spectacular to have from a spacecraft going onto the moon. But for the moment, we will settle. We will happily accept any bit of onboard footage or imagery from any spacecraft, either in orbit or actually on the surface itself.
That a lot of you have joined us in a very extreme time of the day. And how's the situation? So we haven't been able to confirm, but the MCC members will continuously attempt to communicate with the lander, and we will be reporting you the latest state in the media interviewing that's scheduled in a few hours. So we need to never quit the lunar quest, is the spirit we'd like to keep in finishing this the live streaming for now. Thank you very much for joining us.
All right. So it sounds like they will be holding a press conference in a couple of hours, and at that point, that is when we will get an update on the condition of it. But it sounds like at this point, the lunar landing for HAKUTO-R Mission 2 Resilience was not successful, and it appears as if the vehicle crashed upon landing, just based off of the data that we've seen. We will obviously await the official word. Of course, once we do get official word, you can follow us on all the NSF socials. We will be posting updates there as well. So we're on Facebook, X, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, TikTok. Follow us on your favorite ones, and we will be able to keep you updated on the latest data. Now, I did see an interesting question asking, would the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, LRO, be able to take a picture of the crash site? And I believe the answer would be yes, because if I remember correctly, HAKUTO-R Mission 1's crash site was captured by LRO a couple of years ago.
I was just going to say, yeah, there was a very publicized image of the Mission 1 crash site taken from the LRO, or the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter. And because Resilience was targeting roughly the same area to land as Mission 1, one can presume that the LRO will also have a view of the landing and or crash site from today's attempt. So I think we can expect that to take place, although whenever they choose to release that image, I guess is all to be determined and up in the air.
Well, on the ground, but yeah.
Well, I guess there is no air on the moon either, so it's up in the up in the scattered regolith, I guess you could say.
There you go.
God, that's so bad. We're so sorry. I mean, we joke about it now, but we genuinely feel for all of those at ispace and those who have had their hands on the spacecraft and its software to ensure, or to I guess have their best efforts put forward to ensure a safe and successful landing today, which at the moment does not seem to be the case. We genuinely feel for everyone at ispace, and we wish them all the best with Mission 3 and beyond.
Agreed. We say it all the time. Space is hard. If it was easy, everyone would be doing it. So it's
100%.
amazing that a private company is able to do this. Not only, to get to the moon once, but twice. And while their landings have had issues both times, that is still a major accomplishment in itself to be able to get into lunar orbit twice with a private company. And I'm sure that HAKUTO-R Mission 3 will take all of the lessons learned from flights 1 and 2 and be able to improve, and hopefully third time's the charm. So best of luck to everyone on the iSpace team, and we're all behind you.
I mean, the actual motto for Mission 2 from iSpace was "Never quit the lunar quest," and I imagine that will be firmly in place going forwards onto planning and full on execution of Mission 3.
Yes, for sure. Let's see here. Again, I know people saying, did it land, this and that? It has technically landed. It's very likely that it impacted, but it is on the lunar surface, although it is very likely in multiple pieces. We are waiting for that official word, hopefully shortly, from iSpace to confirm the status of it. But it appears at this point that with no data coming back from it and no communications from it, and the last data that we were able to see, that it likely crashed or impacted very hard. Well, again, follow the socials for the latest updates on what iSpace reveals about this landing attempt. But Max, thank you for joining me.
Of course, and thank you very much, everyone, for coming to hang out and watching a very exciting lunar landing attempt. Things did not go according to plan for iSpace, it seems, but we are here to cover anything else that they opt to launch in the future, and we will be here whenever they opt to announce what officially happened here this afternoon.
Yes, and Ryan Caton was the one producing the stream today, helping to bring in the views, making some of the graphics as well, and helping us with the replays as we reviewed the data live with you. I am Sawyer Rosenstein. I have been your host for this stream today. Obviously, there's been a lot of excitement going on as well at Starbase with a static fire attempt that seems like didn't happen there as well. So we are going to send you over to Starbase Live, our 24/7 live cameras, so you can keep up to date and see all of the activity still going on in Starbase. But thank you everyone for watching, and have a great one.
And here we go. We have liftoff.
Propulsion continues to be nominal.
Our HPA chamber pressure looks good.
Doubling up. Roger, roger, planet.
Tango down to nominal.
Flight downside FTE off. Bring in FTE off. Off. It's orange!
Oh my god! Oh my god!
Decollage. Put that in the big bag, Eagle.
343 unfolds to go.
Indeed.
We rise together back to the moon and beyond.
This methane will be igniting in the flare, correct?
Yikes. You dead? Sure. We don't need any more of these.